Welcome to the Powerlifting and Power Ballads podcast, where we bring you a weekly dose of powerlifting news, tips, and training advice with a touch of 80s rock ballads. This podcast is presented by Team Rohr Powerlifting, your source of the most comprehensive coaching and meet day preparation. Here are your hosts, Josh Rohr and Laura Sturm.
Welcome to episode 131. I am without my co-host. Laura is taking the night off, but we are joined by Jazzylyn Pepper and Elizabeth Turner. Welcome back to, are you the first repeat guest? No, I answered my own question before. I'm not even giving you a chance to talk yet. I'm just like running my mouth. Gino, I think, was our first repeat guest. You might be our second repeat guest though.
He deserves to be the first. That's okay.
Yeah, we'll take it.
Yeah. So how are you guys doing? Hello.
Good.
Why are you here?
We've got beef with you, Josh.
That's what I hear.
Salty is what we are.
That's what I hear. Do you want to start with that? Or do you want to just like let it build over the course of, or maybe I can diffuse the situation by talking about other things over the course of the next 20 minutes and then it's up to you. Do you want to just jump in? What's your problem? What's your problem with me? What's your problem with me?
Well, the topic of one of your last podcasts said, is Primetime overused? And we have a problem with that because we don't feel it is. So we're here today to tell you why it is not.
And to be clear, you said that you felt like it was.
Agreed.
Which is the main issue.
Yeah. Well, I meant to be pretty clear when I said that.
Okay.
So I wasn't trying to make it confusing for people. I think it's overused. So I will start with Elizabeth. Why am I correct?
Why are you correct? Okay, just in general, why the word, okay, I will give you one thing, Josh. The word primetime might be overused, but all of us are just trying to give you props for coming up with it first because it was a great idea.
You don't have to suck up. Here's okay. Can I interrupt for a second?
Please.
Because I want to explain what's happening here. That statement was meant to give the illusion that you're sucking up to me, but you and I know each other well enough that I know damn well that was not actually sucking up. That was just for perception of everybody listening. So continue.
Okay. One of your main points in that podcast episode was that meet directors are too worried about making these very large productions and not focused on all the small details that actually matter to lifters or making a meet run smooth. And so our biggest, not argument, but point to that statement is that, yes, this year, specifically, the Atlanta Open has a primetime session. That is still just a primetime session in the Atlanta Open meet. Over the past couple of years, have always focused on bringing a big production to the local level meet. That hasn't changed, even though we're adding the word primetime now. The production level hasn't changed. We're still focused on bringing these lifters a big national experience at the local level. We have gotten better over the years. The first meet might not have been perfect. Every year it gets a little bit better. We always have chairs in the warm-up room. That one thing that was pointed out. Things, like seating and air conditioning and space and bathrooms and all the little things that do actually matter in a meet continue to get better every year. So even though we want to have this big, well-run production, we do still really pay attention to the needs of the lifter.
And this is not our first meet. This is the third time that Atlanta Open is being ran. But in addition to that, there have been several meets that Elizabeth has put on, such as the collegiate meet, Ladies of Iron. So I would say we've done our time and not just like put that on first without having experience of the importance of the little things, which is why we're ready to add the word primetime and help just highlight these great Atlanta lifters that deserve to be highlighted.
And is there time for rebuttal, or do you have?
Yeah, go ahead.
Please, go ahead.
Okay. So my statement still stands. I still think primetime's overused. I still think I still think there are meat directors taking away from the, I guess, prestige of what it's supposed to be. The funniest part about this is I don't include you two in that. I think you by default assume that that was a blanket statement to anybody doing these meets. It wasn't. I'm not going to name them out loud and say you're the person I'm talking about because I think that's kind of rude. But I think it's based, some of the stuff I said previously, when the basics of the meet are not done correctly, when, there's issues with communication, whatever it is, like those are things that have to be done right first. If you got those checked off and you're doing that right, then by all means. So sorry to burst your bubble. I wasn't talking about you specifically. I wanted you to think you thought I was though, right?
Well, yeah.
Because you
Good.
called out the Atlanta Primetime meet in that episode.
And we had just announced it.
Yeah, because it was breaking news. But the previous episode though, prior to that one, did you listen to that one where I actually announced that the meet was sanctioned and it was going to be an awesome opportunity for lifters? I bet you didn't listen to that one.
We did listen to it.
Oh, you
but
did?
We listened to the other one first.
Because you did. Yeah, that was the mistake. We did listen to that one first because you highlighted it. It caught our attention clearly.
You listened to them out of order. I got it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, so I mean, I do. I think it's going to be a good meet. I do. Obviously, I love the concept of it. I think the part that's bothering me is what really irked me was seeing some of these meets outside of USA Powerlifting calling themselves Primetime and going down the rabbit hole of looking at their history of the meets, like how they run the meets, like finding obscure discussions about the shitty meat that they did from lifters. It's a big waste of time going down these rabbit holes. But anyway, the point was the name Primetime, especially with like how our Raw Nationals have run in the past and, the Carolina Primetime, some of these other meets that are really well done and people know by name are being used to promote these other shitty meets. And that really pisses me off. So that's where I was coming from with it. And I'll be honest, if Atlanta Primetime goes very poorly and the little things aren't taken care of, that will really bother me. But I know you guys aren't. I mean, that's obviously things happen, right? Some things out of your control can come up. That's different. But it's when the meet directors are negligent and just really don't care, and they're just using it to get people's attention. That just irks me like bad. So
yeah, they're doing it for the clout and not necessarily for the lifters.
So wasn't directed at you two. Kind of glad you thought it was because this is kind of fun, but it really wasn't. But I'm watching you guys.
But you knew it had an impact because I took one look at you at States and you knew exactly what I was thinking.
Yep, 100%. Okay, so full disclosure, I knew you would think it was directed at you because I tried to make it as vague as possible. I was 100% going to circle back and talk to you guys, whether it was on a podcast or not, and let you know that I didn't feel that way. But it just so worked out that it got you guys on their podcast. So like, instead of using the name Primetime, I can just like say little things to make you come on our podcast.
But now we got a live public apology that you are actually in support of us. So
yes, I am 100% in support of you two.
Thank you.
We appreciate that.
Until proven wrong, put it that way. I always got to put that out there.
Well, I think we can end this here. Good talk.
Good talk. We'll see you guys next week. So there are a couple things that just came out that I want to mention, and you guys can chime in if you want to. The rule change on American records was just announced. I don't know. Have you heard about this?
Yeah. And they sent emails.
So for those that don't know, effective immediately, and this is as of like February 25th, maybe. So any American record that a person is eligible to break at any meet that's eligible to break American records, you can chip regardless of what division you're in. And that chip counts towards your total in every division you're in. So previously, you could only chip the record that was the highest between all of the divisions you were in, essentially. So if you were in the Masters division and the Open division, if the Masters record was 100 and the Open record was 300, you could not chip unless it exceeded 300. Well, now it doesn't matter. Now you could chip 100.5 in the Masters division, even if you're in the Open division. Or it's even further, it could be a meet that only has an Open division. There is no Masters division. There's no nothing else, only an Open division. A person entered in that meet could still chip a Masters record if they're a Masters lifter, even though they're only in the Open division, and it still counts towards their total in the Open division. First thoughts?
That piece of it I did not know. If they're not actually in the division, they can still chip it.
Yep.
Just kind of cool, but I feel like there's going to be too many records set now. Is that a thing?
So they still have to, they still have to exceed the record. So it's still a record that existed. So for example, like a Masters 4 record, a Masters 4 lifter still has to exceed the Masters 4 record to chip it.
There's just going to be a lot of record setting, I guess is more what I meant.
Perhaps. I don't know that that's going to change that, honestly.
I think it just makes it easier to
everybody has more opportunities. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's fun. I don't really have a positive or negative opinion either way.
So I have thought of all the ways this is going to be used for evil. For example, as a coach, if it's within the rules, I damn well am doing it.
Oh, we know.
Yeah, it's going to be a problem though. Like, think about it. If a lifter wins an additional $5,000 because they can take a chip that somebody else can't, that's not going to cause a problem. Even without the money, like just the integrity of the competition is tarnished, I think. However, as a coach who coaches a lot of Masters lifters that are competitive at the Open level, it's not fair, but it's the rule, and we're going to use the rule to our advantage.
Do you see it as something that goes for 6 months and then they overturn it? Do they do that frequently? I
doubt they will, but it wouldn't surprise me if they did. Yeah. So basically with the new rule, you can chip any American record you're eligible for, regardless of division. And strategically, that is going to play a role with a lot of different meets, because some lifters are not going to be able to chip and others will be. And it's going to be interesting.
We'll find out this weekend.
So other thing that came up, because I'm a nerd, I always audit the team rankings and the team placings based on the results of the Georgia State meet. And I found some inaccuracies in what was awarded. Long story short, a different team won than was announced.
Do you want to tell us how these are currently being scored and what might have happened?
I would love to. Thanks for asking. So how the current team scoring is, which I hate, and I've made no reservations about telling people that, there's two different standards based on how many people are on your team. The same number of scores are counted. You score 10 scores. But if your team has 9 or fewer lifters on the roster, each lifter is allowed to score twice. So like if you're in the Open division and the Masters division, or Open bench only and Open full power, etc., that would count as 2. If you have 10 lifters or more, each individual lifter can only score once. Well, I have a problem with the two different standards right off the bat. That makes no sense to me. You still score 10 scores. And the way this scoring is set up, it's done by dots. So you're competing pound for pound with everybody else in the division. So it's about quality, not quantity. The problem, I'll just give an example. The team that won officially, that was announced, actually did not win because of this rule, because they were only allowed to score each lifters once. Had a few of their lifters not entered a second division, they would not have blocked their teammates from getting higher points, and they would have won anyway.
Oh.
So basically, lifter A was entered in the Open and Masters. I'm making this up. This isn't exactly it because I don't want to say who it was. They got first place points in the Open, and first place points in the Masters. But because they're on a big team, they can only count one of them. So instead of 24 points, they get 12. Well, in second place in the Masters is somebody from the same team that now only gets 9 points instead of 12. So they were penalized 3 points for entering an additional division. And there's no way you should ever be penalized for placing high in a meet. So regardless of who gets that first place, they should get points. If you have a lifter that can win the open division, the Masters division, full power and bench only, and they win all 4 of those, they should get first place points for all 4 of them. Just like a track and field athlete that enters 4 events, if they win all 4, they get first place points for their team, even though it's one individual.
So the incorrect team that got announced, this is incorrect based on the current rules, not what you think the rule should be.
Correct.
It was
Correct.
incorrectly calculated anyways.
Yes, that's the part that's even more frustrating to me, because the team that was announced as the winner should have been the winner, in my opinion, based on what I think the rules should be. However, the team that won, based on the way the rules are written, is not the one that won.
So they got to give that trophy back.
I know. What do you do now? Like, how do you? Obviously, this is going out there, so people are going to know.
But there wasn't an official release of how the points broke down after the fact. Because like my team, we were just told where we placed, but I didn't get to see the official points based on what they thought. I just calculated what I thought.
Yeah, I have not seen any official. So last year they put out a social media graphic with the actual team placings and points, and they were correct because I checked. This year there was no release of the points anywhere, just what was announced as the placings at the meet. And maybe they announced the points when they were calling people up. I don't know. I don't remember that. If they did, I didn't write it down at the time. But looking at the picture of the people on the podium, I know that order is not correct. And it affects more than one team. I won't say team names, but there's more than one team that is affected.
We'll see how many DMs you get after this podcast, Josh.
Yeah,
People
probably a lot.
real answers.
So I also want to say this, like, I don't want to just sit here and point fingers and say, that was done wrong. There's a lot of stress, especially after the meet, doing awards and things like that. So mistakes can happen. So like, I don't want people to hear this and think, oh, Josh is like really coming down on, the meet directors and all this stuff. That's not the case. I'm just pointing out the facts at this point. I may be a little more animated about it because the system is actually kind of what caused the problem of the wrong team being announced. But regardless, like, in all seriousness, it's a crappy situation because some team that worked their butt off, that thought they won, is not going to be the winner. And the team that should have been on the top of the podium with the trophy with all the pictures is not going to have that opportunity. And I know for us, like when we didn't enter a team this year, but the state meet is usually the only meet once a year that most of our team is together at one time. So I don't know, like my heart breaks for the team that should have won, like, because that's an opportunity you're not going to have back. But all that to say, I know I'm getting long-winded here, is like, mistakes happen, and I'm sure it will be addressed. And I'm sure part of it is, figuring out the right way to announce it, which I guess is going to end up being from this podcast, which is not the correct way to announce it. But it's something that it's not. So to me, I don't feel like I'm announcing anything that's secret, because the criteria is listed and anybody can pull up the results and do the math. I'm just a big enough nerd to actually sit down and do it. So all of this is public. Anybody can go do that. Actually, I encourage everybody to go do that. Download the results, pull up the team criteria, and do the calculations. It adds up, or it doesn't add up, however you want to say it.
I do hope that this comes to light and that the correct team does get to celebrate at some point.
Well, it's coming to light because the podcast is coming out. So
comes to light.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. I mean, like, I think you guys can say too, like, if this happened to you and you were the meet directors and this happened, like you would want to address it officially the right way. And sometimes that takes a little bit of time to figure out, like, contacting the people involved, all those things. And I did contact the team that won and told them, so they're not being blindsided by this. I didn't contact anybody else, but they are aware. So
good.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, hopefully it fixes the future.
Well, I'm still advocating for a discussion with all of the clubs to explain these scenarios that people don't think about.
Yeah, speaking of that, at one point you had proposed a state meeting after the state meet, at which that was turned down and was proposed to go virtual. Is there still a plan for that?
There's no plan that I know of. I'm 100% on board.
I thought I remembered that responsibility getting passed on to you, but maybe it didn't.
I think the responsibility was to like set up the meeting and everything, but like I mean, I'm not sure that I can, as Josh Rohr, call a state meeting. I'm not in a leadership role in the state. I mean, I guess I could, but like,
we'd show up.
So I think that actually has to be initiated by the state chairs or Siraj at this point. Yeah, state chair. But yeah, I'm 100% on board with that. I think we should have a meeting yearly at minimum. And I think that, this team scoring thing needs to be addressed. Again, I might be the only one, and this might be the hill I die on. That's fine. But, I feel strongly about it, and I'm going to voice my opinion, and if there is a meeting and people vote against it, that's fine. I'm still going to voice my opinion, but I'm going to go with what people want. I just think that there's so many holes in the current system that are not just confusing, but unfair. And I think the idea with it originally was to make it more fair. And I feel like this makes it unfair for the bigger teams. And I think case in point, that example of, the winning team would have been different based on what I think it should be, just straightforward. If you place there, you get those points versus, changing it based on the size of your team. I feel like I'm doing more talking than need be. Thoughts on anything we've talked about so far? Positive, negative, disagree with me?
I'm just happy you said you're in favor of us. That's really nice.
you quit listening after that, right? Yeah. You like listening to music. You're not even listening to me anymore. So
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say everything you said makes sense, and I agree with all of it.
So I am 100% going to. Do you ever watch or look at the Two White Lights social media? Like sometimes they'll put like a quote. That is going to be a quote, Elizabeth Turner. I 100% agree. I'll have to go back and get it word for word, but I 100% agree with everything Josh Rohr has said and agree with him. End quote.
End quote. Period.
Perfect. Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
So you're running the Georgia High School State Championship.
I am.
You are.
Might have gotten roped into it, but I'm running it.
You definitely got roped into it. I appreciate it. So it was either you or me.
And it wasn't going to be you.
And it wasn't going to be me. So
here I am.
So there here you are. But I do want to talk about it because like that is a meet that is like very near and dear to my heart. It is where a lot of people get their first exposure to powerlifting. And I think there's so many high school like football teams, soccer teams, softball teams that show up to this as a reward for their weight training that they do in season, off season. And a lot of lifters have found powerlifting as their next sport post high school, post college, whatever, through some of these meets. So I think it's a very important meet to have. And I know the past few years, like with COVID, it kind of just quit happening. And, that was kind of right at the time that I quit running meets too, just got burnt out and, it was all difficult. So, all that to say is I appreciate you taking it on. And I do want to, I guess I do want to say, now that it's officially sanctioned and you have signed up for it, that you didn't actually have to do it, but I understand how you felt like you had to do it because I kind of really leaned on you to do it. And I feel a little bit bad about that, but
Do you?
I said a little bit. I don't feel that bad about it because here's the thing. If I really didn't think you would do a good job, I would not have insisted as hard as I did that you do it. Like I would have, in this situation, I would have just done it myself, even though I really don't want to, just because I got so many other things going on, but this meet's that important to me. So I guess if I'm not really good at expressing my feelings and things like that. So this is about as big of a compliment as I can give you is I trust you with the Georgia High School State Championship.
That means a lot, Josh. It does. And I am just as passionate, if not more passionate, about collegiate powerlifting than you are about high school powerlifting. So I am happy to fulfill your wishes and continue the meet for this year.
Second quote, I am happy to fulfill your wishes, end quote.
I need to stop talking.
No. Quotes out of context. So I am also, I don't know if you know this or not, because I'm really, really old now. So I started in college and I started a team at my university. And my senior year at Collegiate Nationals, we placed third as a team with only 4 lifters. Like our entire roster had 4 lifters. 3 out of 4 of us won Collegiate Nationals.
Josh Rohr, the powerlifting prodigy.
We made some really angry, large teams even angrier. But that's my whatever. So I am passionate about the high school, but I agree I'm actually more passionate about the collegiate. I think they're both really important and have their place. And unfortunately, I can't do everything I would like to do, but I can live vicariously through you two. So
now we just have to make sure we keep doing a good job. Otherwise, Josh is going to disown us.
That's anybody. So I wouldn't say I'll disown you, but I don't like complacency. And that doesn't mean you have to always do bigger and better and than the last time and always improve. Cause I think that's where people get burnt out running meets and things like that. But I've seen meet directors get complacent where they just quit caring about it. Just becomes a dollars and cents and spreadsheet, and the human factor gets lost. And that's where I start having a problem. And I think that's also kind of what burnt me out is, I take everything like to heart. So when I ran the Georgia State meet, whatever year, and, I get like 10, 15 people send a little email like, hey, great meet. Thanks for everything. I get the one email that says, this happened to me where my belt wasn't approved and I had to run to the store and get a belt because that wasn't communicated to me ahead of time. That's the part that I don't know where I'm going. All I'm saying is like when people stop caring about that stuff, that's when I get bothered. So as long as you keep caring and keep trying, it's never going to be perfect, but keep trying and I got your back.
Jazz and I are sitting here nodding because both of us know the exact comment from the Atlanta Open last year that did it in for us. And that's all we talked about for 2 weeks. So,
and that's the hard thing though, because usually you don't get the feedback when it's great. But if somebody has a bad experience, you're going to know about it. And even if every single lifter did write you their experience and 99% of it was positive, it still stings when you get that negative, because whether it was something that was in your direct control in that moment or not, you're going to feel like, what steps could I have taken to have avoided that? And then you go down the rabbit hole like, well, let's see. If I would have had somebody in the parking lot reminding people to get their wallet out of their car as they come in, maybe, it's just like, where do you draw the line? And then that's impossible. Just keep trying, keep caring, and you do just fine. All right. We need to move on. unless there's anything you want to add to that.
No, sign up for the high school state championship
And the Atlanta Open in Primetime.
and the Atlanta Open and the Atlanta Open. Primetime is invite only. The Atlanta Open still has about 20,
yes.
Yeah, a little less than 30 spots right now, and they will start going fast as we get to the end. So if you want to do that meet, don't hesitate, because I wouldn't expect it to be open for another week or two.
Yes. So here's a question for you. So let's say a really good lifter from out of state signs up for the Atlanta Open with a really high dots. Would they get an invite to the Atlanta Primetime, or is that exclusively for Atlanta? Well, Georgia lift. Is it Atlanta or Georgia? Tell me the rules.
So, yes, if a lifter signs up for the Open with a very high dots, maybe they're from out of state, someone we didn't send an invite to, we will move them or ask them if they want to be moved to the Primetime session. We actually have already done that for 2 lifters, both a male and a female. I don't want to say names yet because the roster's not been released, but yes, we did have some spots open after first round of invites were sent, and so we have moved a couple of people. And depending on what the rest of the open sign up looks like, there could be more spots available for the Primetime. So yes, and we invited first lifters from Georgia. So we ranked all of the Georgia lifters from the last 2 or 3 years by dots and kind of went top 20 from there. And then, filled in wherever we could if lifters couldn't come or what. There were a couple of special invites sent, and then, as mentioned, a few lifters kind of moved over from open from other states. So that was the initial criteria, was top 20 by dots in Georgia for the last couple of years.
And I will say we are just trying to make sure that we don't have necessarily a dots cap, but just trying to make sure that the competition still is within the same range, so that you don't have somebody with maybe a 530 dots and then 425. We're just trying to still keep it at a high caliber, even if it means less people being in that Primetime session. So we're not focused on necessarily just making sure that it gets filled, but making sure that it's still going to be a good competition.
You said there's not a dots cap. Is that what you said?
Yeah,
we're not a minimum.
Yeah, sorry.
Not a minimum. Got it. So I'm so if you have too high of a dots, you don't get to go?
Sorry, not a dots minimum is what I mean.
Well, that excludes me then.
Georgia has some strong lifters, not nearly as many as Carolinas. So there's a little bit of a bigger spread on the dots because the Carolinas have some insane lifters, but it's still shaping up to be a really solid meet. I know we have at least 5 or 6 lifters with over a 500 dots, so it should be really fun to watch.
That's awesome. So the Arnold is this weekend. I was going to do, this would be the time that we normally do the little preview for our lifters that are competing. We have 5 lifters competing, but I will not do that. I will let you guys do your preview for the person that's on this episode that's going to be lifting.
Well, Team Fueled has 3 lifters. So we will let Jazz talk about all 3 of those.
Well, thank you, Josh, for that. I appreciate it, I think. 3 people from Team Fueled. We have Marcus Morris. He will be in the pro amateur session on Saturday morning at 8. I will be in the pro finale at 2. And then I have Jared Scott.
Pro Series finals.
Sorry, Pro Series finals at 2. And then I have Gerald Scott the next day. And what is that going to be called? Pro what? The pro is what it looks like when you look online.
It's the pro portion of the pro-am. Because of the schedule and the way the timing of the Arnold, we don't get to control how much time we have in different areas of the Arnold. So they basically had to split the pro-am event into 2 separate events. So we have a pro-am amateur meet on Saturday and a Pro-Am Pro event on Sunday.
Yeah, he's in Pro-Am Pro. Look at those names.
Yeah. So that's awesome. So you're in the finals. Congrats. I'm trying to say congratulations. Congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
That'll be fun. Cool. All right. You guys want to do the powerlifting situation?
Sure. Josh, we have a question for you on how you would handle this situation. May or may not be one that both Jazz and I have been in. So you are at one of these so-called primetime meets. Two of the coaches are fighting with the meet directors in the middle of the competition on whether or not shipping a lift is allowed. You not as in you, Josh, but you as in the situation are the TC as a ref, and you're stuck in the middle of this argument trying to figure out what to do. So what would you do and how would you handle this?
As a TC, if I did not know who was right, I would consult the rule book and that would give you your answer.
Simple enough. What if during this meet you didn't even know what the argument was about or how divisions were established?
In that situation, that would be a meet director question. If you don't know how the well, actually, I'm gonna back up on that. If you have, as a TC, if you could look at the score sheet, you would be able to see how it's. So here's what I would do. If you have a tablet or whatever you're looking at the score sheet, use that. If not, I would probably go to the closest display. And if you click on any of the views, the board view, results view, you can see how it's being scored, whether it's by weight class, whether it's by dots, whatever it is, dots with age, you can see all that. And based on the individual lifter in question, you could actually click their name and it'll show every division that they're in and how it's being scored. So that would give you all the information you would need at that point to interpret how knowing the rules, I guess, or being able to look them up, but knowing what you're trying to look up. So if you aren't sure how it's being scored or what divisions people are in, that would give you your answer to that. And then if you don't know how to interpret what to do with that, then you can consult the rule book, knowing exactly the scenario that's being argued about.
But as a TC, you probably shouldn't be the one to actually make a decision at the meet, correct?
Correct. Yeah. That is not the TC's role. The TC's role is to, indirectly, yes, because not make the decision, but initiate the solution. So meaning, the platform referees are likely not going to stop the meet, get out of the chair. The TC is kind of just like a jury at a national meet. They're the ones that go correct problems. So, if there's a misload at a national meet, you don't see the platform referees get up and go take care of it. They signal the jury and the jury goes and takes care of it. That would be kind of the TC's role in this situation is, one, if I'll say this, if it's a blatant rule violation and you are aware of it and you know for sure it's a rule violation, then I would say it is within your capacity to approach the platform referees and let them know, hey, this is not allowed. Because a lot of times the platform referees aren't able to see the data on the score sheet or know what division somebody's in that you were able to access as a TC. So I would say that would be kind of your, not authority, but within your right to do at that point. And obviously the meet director needs to be brought in because, ultimately the meet director is the one responsible for briefing the referees, making sure that the rules are followed, both on the platform and outside of that. So yeah. What was the question?
As a TC, you can't make the decision, but you answered that question.
Yeah. How you handle these two coaches going back and forth,
Yeah,
yelling at you.
Stay back.
My first, honestly, my first answer would be go to the rule book and find out exactly what the rule is and nobody has the authority to circumvent the rule book. So if somebody's like, well, that's fine, we're going to do that. That is not how it works. And as a referee, it is your responsibility to enforce the rules, whether it's regardless of who's trying to break them. I still don't know if I answered your question directly, but if I'm in that, all right, here's what I would do. If I'm in that situation and there's discrepancy, I would tell the chief referee or ask the chief referee if they can pause the meet for a minute and then actually maybe have a conference with all three referees, the TC and the meet director, make sure everybody's on the same page. Like, is there a misunderstanding between the coaches of what the divisions are? Are they both crystal clear on what the divisions are and they just disagree? If that's the case, that means one is right and one is wrong based on the rules. There is no gray area. The gray area would be if one coach understands the divisions to be this, another coach understands the divisions to be this, and they don't realize what they actually are. That could be where the confusion's coming from. But again, Lifting Cast doesn't lie either. You can get on Lifting Cast and find out exactly what the divisions are. It's all black and white. So it might just be a matter of, making sure everybody is fully briefed on the situation and the rule and go from there. Because after that, there is no gray area. It's cut and dry.
Beautifully said on the third try.
Yeah. We'll get rid of the first two tries.
Quote that.
I will quote that. That's funny. Anyway, and I think too, like, being confident in what you know. Like, I think people, when somebody talks loud, they forget what they know, and just sometimes don't stand on what they know to be true and what the rule actually says, or they don't want to cause a scene or whatever. But ultimately, the rule book, and it has to be enforced. And
this might be a hot take, but as a younger referee or someone who's newer, just because a certain referee has a certain title or level status of referee doesn't mean that they are 100% correct all the time. You have to trust what you know in the rule book.
And it also doesn't mean that they get to tell you to ignore this rule. The rules are the rules. Like, a national referee can't tell a state referee, well, they can weigh in with their clothes on. That's not the rule. They can't make that call. They can't change the rule just because they want to. The rules are the rules. Same way, man, I'm going on a rant here, but same with judging. Like, well, this is a local meet, so if they're an inch high, that's good. That's not the rule. You can't make that call. That's not your authority to do. And I don't care what level referee you are, you need to call any referee that says that, because that's not allowed. I don't think that happens very often. I'm just making up scenarios there, but.
Well, it does. I have definitely heard people say that their level of reffing or rule judging would be lighter at a certain meet compared to another, which is not fair.
Yeah, that's not what the rules are. The rules are very cut and dry. Squat depth is crease at the top of the hip, below the top of the knee. So if that's not what they're doing, if they're close isn't breaking it. And that doesn't mean they have to so you can go the other side of that too. Strict judging doesn't mean you make somebody go 2 inches below parallel.
Right.
Like, that's not strict judging. That's shitty judging. Like, breaking parallel is breaking parallel, period. It doesn't matter how far below parallel you go. So I've seen it both ways. Like, man, judging's really strict. Like, they're making you squat 2 inches below. No, that's terrible judging if they're making you go 2 inches below what you actually have to go. Anyway, you have a new lifter tip?
Yes. So this is kind of coming off of the Georgia State meet. I did equipment checks for even just one session of Georgia State's, and it's very disheartening the amount of equipment, or specifically t-shirts, to turn down for logos or graphics or images or whatever it might be that doesn't fit the rule. So my biggest tip is make sure that you double and triple check the USAPL logo rules before deciding what you're going to wear on the platform and showing up to equipment checks. If there's any question on a logo, a graphic, an image, a color, a pattern, it's probably not approved. So don't try to bring it to equipment checks. The plainer the equipment, solid color, no image, the better. You'd hate to get to equipment checks and have something turned down for what I'm going to call a silly graphic or image.
You reminded me of something. I'm looking it up right now because I want to not misquote it pertaining to equipment check stuff. But their clarification was use of nicknames on the platform apparel or personal equipment, as long as it is not derogatory or offensive in any way. And that includes consideration of other countries, cultures, and languages. It must be written in English, the common language for all officials. And we ask that athletes be mindful of the impact of the nickname. If there is doubt by an official whether the nickname may be offensive, it will not be permitted on the platform. So I think this gives a little bit more flexibility for people that might just have like J Money on their belt. Like that, if that's the nickname, that could be allowed. Whereas before, that's not my legal name, that doesn't count. So it does give some flexibility, but obviously it's at the discretion of the referees. If they feel like it's offensive or anything, it cannot be offensive. So
the way I interpret that rule, I mean, you could almost essentially put any word on a piece of equipment now, as long as it's not offensive, because anybody could say that, oh, this is a nickname and this is what people call me.
Yeah, I mean, that's the slippery slope of it all. But I as a referee, like I would probably have to Google a lot of these words just to see what does pop up, because I'm not hip. But if it's not offensive and like they say, so that's the thing, they would still have to tell me that's their nickname. Because if they just say like, this is just a cool slogan, slogans aren't allowed, it's nicknames. Like that's very clear. So I think there's still intent with it too. But yeah, your new lifter tip, I 100% agree with. Make sure you know what you're allowed to wear on the platform ahead of time. It's better to find out ahead of time that you can't wear it and replace it versus show up and be scrambling. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Unless you guys have anything else you want to add.
Thanks for having us.
Are we friends again?
You're still going to California on the weekend of 2 very large meets. So
I'm on the friend probation list.
Yeah.
Got it. All right. Well, thank you guys for being on. Second time. You guys are regulars now.
I think we need to be the first to three-peat.
Yeah.
All right.
Maybe after the open.
All right. Deal. All right, let's do that. After the Atlanta Open in Primetime, you have an open invitation. You have a primetime invitation to be on the podcast for the third time to discuss how it went.
Make sure you create an invite.
I will not do that, but in theory I would, but I'm too lazy. Like full disclosure, I put zero effort into this podcast. It's really kind of sad, but I have a great time doing it. So
there you go.
I'm just shocked that people listen, if I'm being honest.
What are you going to title this one? Josh Rohr is always correct.
Yeah, that's a good one, actually.
That is kind of good. I like that. I like it because I didn't come up with it. And that can also be a quote. What should we title this? Josh Rohr is always correct. Jazzylyn Pepper.
Oh man, I'm busted after this.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're gonna wrap this podcast up. We're going way long here, but thank you both for being on. I do appreciate it. We will have you back on after the Atlanta Open in Primetime for sure. So
follow Atlanta Open on Instagram.
Yeah, there you go.
The best content.
It's not Atlanta Open. What is your actual Instagram handle?
Atlanta.open. Is it?
That's a very important detail.
I think it's dot. If you search Atlanta Open, it should pop up.
See, this is the benefit of having an OCD person on with you, is like calling out all of these ridiculously minute details that probably don't really matter.
Oh, Josh.
Anyway. All right. Atlanta.open, or you're double checking?
I just checked Atlanta.open.
Okay. Follow Atlanta.open on Instagram. Awesome. Jazz, how about you? Anything? Don't care. 2 thumbs up. Just shut up and get off this thing. Is that what you're saying?
I was just glad that you reached our point. That's what I cared about the most.
She's been checked out for the last hour.
I'm just glad that I was here to just make sure you said we were right.
Got it.
End quote.
Well, technically, that was never said.
That's how I took it.
Okay.
He was proud of us.
I am proud of you. I did say I did say that in as many words as I actually will ever say that to anybody. So yes.
The highest honor.
All right. We're ending this episode. Thank you all for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, share it with your friends, all that good stuff. We'll catch you guys next week. Later.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode of the Powerlifting and Power Ballads podcast, please remember to subscribe and share it with your friends.